Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So as promised in yesterday's video, today I'm going to go over my 2021 Turo exit strategy and how I personally buy my cars. And I'm just going to share my experience in full disclosure before I get into this video. Of course, at the end of the day, I'm just one person and this is what has worked best for me. But before you go into purchasing any cars, you really do have to do your own due diligence and see what makes sense for you. Everyone does it differently. Everyone has different opinions on what works best for them. And everyone has a different threshold for the amount of risk that they're willing to take. So it is such a variable and it really depends on the person, the individual, and what you're comfortable with doing. I'm the type of person where taking risks doesn't really scare me too much. I have a lot of confidence in my problem solving abilities. So I'm able to do things that maybe your normal person wouldn't feel as comfortable doing. So it just really depends on kind of where you're at with things. So this is just my experience, what has worked well for me, and I will share that experience. But at the end of the day, make sure that you do your own research and figure out what you are most comfortable with. Now, yesterday I had mentioned that I like to lease when it comes to getting cars for my Turo fleet. And a lot of you guys had questions about, whether there's a gray area or not when it comes to leases and sharing in the gig marketplace. From what I've heard, yes, there is a gray area, but I have personally not ran into any issues, not on Turo's end and not on the side of the dealer either. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It definitely could happen, but it just hasn't happened for me. But that is sort of also my overall view on gig economies as well, is that they do, most of them operate in sort of this gray area because they are new and people are still trying to figure things out, the platforms included, right? So things are not exactly black and white, but sometimes that is the cost of opportunity. That is the cost of getting into something early enough and kind of beating the crowds that are eventually going to come in and saturate the market. So again, goes kind of back to the amount of risk that you're willing to take. I got in early, I was willing to take the risk, and I've been okay with the decisions that I've made, and I've been able to handle any of the problems that have come with it. Those types of things don't scare me because for me personally, my mindset is always, hey, if there's a problem, just work on the solution, right? There's really no reason to panic or stress or worry about it. You just got to work on it. So with that said, let me talk about kind of how I structure my leases when I want to go get a car for the Turo platform. So for me personally, I love to do high mileage leases because of course people are renting your cars and they're going out and they are putting a considerable amount of miles on it. And this can vary based on where you are geographically located, what people are up to. There are many markets out there where it is just local renters who are doing things just locally, right? And then there are markets out there where their primary is people are traveling or road tripping. So it depends on where you're at. Where I'm located, I get like a really nice mix of people. So I would say it's real 50-50. So more or less, I kind of know how many miles people will put on in a year. So through my experience, I really feel comfortable when I have a lease that is up to or between 15 to 18,000 miles per year. I have found that that keeps me safe. And yes, when you go into a dealership and you tell them, hey, I'm looking for a lease with 18,000 miles on it per year, they are definitely going to raise some eyebrows, but it doesn't matter. There's no rule out there that says that you cannot get a high mileage lease because you're going to pay for it. So don't let them talk you out of anything or kind of make you feel like, why are you getting so many miles? It's really none of their business, right? So you just go into it knowing exactly what it is that you want. Now, I like to do 15 to 18,000 miles per year and typically a 2 to 3 year lease because within 2 to 3 years, there's enough wear and tear on the car. And also the year of the car gets older and you want to stay competitive. So for me, 2 to 3 years has been a real sweet spot to where I can get out of the lease and get into something newer. And that has worked out very well for me. It keeps me competitive in the market. Going into it, you really have to think about what your numbers are. You have to do your market research. You got to figure out what's going on in your area, what your typical day rates could be. Now, doing market research is a really extensive topic, and there's a lot that goes into it in terms of the different variables and things that you should be looking for. If you go to my website, which the link is in the description below, you can find more information on it. I have lots of tutorials on that. So what I like to do is I like to figure out, after doing my research on a particular car, what do I think the average day rate is going to be in any given month for that car? And you want to take that number and you want to take into consideration what your revenue split with Turo is going to be. So that is determined by your host protection plan, right? Most hosts, I find, land at that 70% protection where they are splitting 30% with Turo. So Turo takes 30, you take 70 out of every $100. If your day rate is 100, they take 30, you take home 70. Now that's really important because that is going to be your main variable into figuring out how many days a car has to be rented to make your payment if you are going the route of leasing or financing where you are going to have that monthly payment. This is very important. Of course, there's other costs like your own personal insurance that you want to take into consideration, but that varies for every single person. So you have to figure out what that's going to be. But your main concern should be what your day rate is and what your take home is going to be from that day rate based on your host protection plan. So I'm just going to throw a hypothetical example out there, right? That's not really based on anything, but let's just take a Mercedes-Benz, let's say an E-Class, right? The lowest E-Class that they have. Let's say that your car payment lands at maybe $800 a month and your average day rate that you can get in a month is $100. You're on that 70% plan with Turo, so you give them 30%, which means your per day take home is $70. How many days does it take you to cover your car payment? $800 divided by 70 is roughly like 11 and a half, right? So it's going to take 11 and a half rental days to get that car payment covered. In my opinion, my personal opinion, that's a little bit high. I don't like to see a car take that many rental days off a calendar to make its car payment, because one of the things that you really rely on is your weekend business. There's only so many weekends in a month. And if, a month is really slow and you're relying on just weekend business, well, then that's going to put you at a lot of risk. So to me, 11 and a half is quite expensive. But let's just say you have a really busy month, right? And you're averaging 25 days per month for rentals, which I've seen that often. That has been a consistent trend for me in a normal year, non-pandemic year, where business was as usual. So if you take the remainder days out of 25, you're looking at, what is that, like 14-ish days or so, right? At $70, that's about just a little under $1,000 that you could take home for the month, right? So for you, you really have to ask yourself, is that worth it? Is it worth it to rent a car out at 25 days, $100 per day, and in the end, your revenue is about $1,000 or so for the month? Are you going to be happy with that? Is that going to meet your goals? Because everybody's goals are different. Now, maybe you have 10 cars, so you're okay with doing $1,000 per month on 10 cars. It just all depends. There is not a cookie cutter system of what applies to everyone. It depends on why you're doing Turo, why you're listing your car, what your goals are. Are you just trying to offset a payment? Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to just do it on the side? It all depends. So these are questions that you really do have to sit and really give some thought to determine for yourself so that you can make a better buying decision. That's one of the big pitfalls that I see people make. The mistake that they make is they rush into buying a car without really fully thinking about all of these things and really having clear and concise goals as to what it is that they want. So then they go and get in a car, and then maybe things aren't exactly as you thought that they were going to be, and then you end up feeling like it's not worth it. So you really have to do your due diligence and figure out what it is that you want so you can make the best buying decision. Now, another thing is I often get this comment, well, hey, what car should I go get? I want to buy a car within the next week. Well, sometimes it doesn't work like that, because when you're getting a car, you have to make sure that you get the right deal and it makes sense. And those deals are not always readily available. So it requires research and it requires time. I mean, yes, sometimes I've walked into a dealership randomly, not even thinking about buying a car, not even looking, and I found the deal that was perfect for Turo, right? So I walked away with a car. But then there's been other times where I've gone and it's taken me months to find the right car at the right deal to where it would make sense to make money. So you definitely don't want to rush the decision, and you want to go in knowing exactly what it is that you need. Which leads me to my next point. Let's just say you're ready, you did your homework, you're ready to lease a car, and you want to go to a dealership. So what is sort of the best way of doing that? In my opinion, what I like to do is go to really reputable dealerships and dealerships that seem to do a high volume of sales. Because I've noticed that when you go to a dealership that does high volume, they have far more leeway and discretion when it comes to getting a deal done because they're highly motivated to make numbers. And if they're highly motivated to make numbers, they will work with you on whatever it is that you need, and they'll try to really meet your needs. And so that has worked well for me. Another major thing is building that relationship. You really want to take the time to build relationships with your dealerships. It takes time and it takes a lot of repetition and consistency of going in and finding the best salesperson that you can and building that relationship. But once you do it, it is such a great path to be on because you don't realize how much discretion they have in getting deals done for you. And that is how you can really accumulate a lot of cars, is if you find a good person on the other end to work with. Oftentimes, I look for whoever the top salesperson is because they are typically connected directly to the banks. When they're connected directly to the banks, they have more pull in getting deals approved. They can almost just make a call and just say, hey, I need you to push this through. So it's such a discretionary business. Most businesses are. So you just really have to have that finesse with people, and you have to have that ability to build that relationship. And then you just have to have patience because all of this takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you take the time and kind of really build up to that, it's going to pay off in multiples later on. It'll make your life easier. When you spot deals, you'll be able to move on them much quicker, and you'll have somebody in your pocket that's going to help you get it done. So it's very important. Then my other tip about going in for car buying is know what your numbers have to be before you go in. Don't go in and kind of just like browse and like, oh, this sounds kind of cool, or this price sounds okay. Know your math before you go in based on what you think the day rate is going to be and how many days it's going to go out for and what your insurance is going to be. You need to come down to a number, an exact number, so that when you go in, it's a non-emotional buying decision. You're going in making a business mathematical decision, and it will always throw your salesperson off because whenever I go in, they're like, oh, but just test drive this car. You're going to love it. I'm like, no, I don't want to test drive it. I don't ever test drive any of my cars. And I'm very upfront with them. I'm like, hey, listen, this is like a numbers decision for me. This is where I need to be at. I cannot move the needle. So either you can get me here or you can't. And it's really as simple as that. And they'll try to wear you down and they'll throw all kinds of things at you, but just stay strong in whatever your numbers are, and they'll eventually get the hint. And once they know that you can't budge on that, then they'll really start pulling their tools out and they'll work with you on making that happen. So that is so important. Don't go in it emotionally. Don't think about the car emotionally. Don't think about how much you love it or how great these features are. Go into it as a mathematical decision. This is where you have to be, and you cannot budge, because otherwise it's going to mess with your bottom line, and then you're going to pay for that later on. You don't want to find yourself in that position. So that's also incredibly important. And then finally, my rule of thumb is always to not put any money down. I don't ever put any money down when I get cars, because why? One thing a lot of people don't know is that when you put money down, that money actually goes to the dealership. It's often used for commissions. It's not like it's going to the financing bank. Banks actually don't require that typically, so you actually don't have to put that money down. And they'll tell you everything to convince you otherwise, but it's really true. You don't have to put money down. I rather you keep that money. I rather myself keep that money and use that as a safety net if there is a month where things get slow or a pandemic happens and business falls off. You know, anything can happen. So it's really important to maintain like a 3 to 4 month safety net so that you're always prepped and never in a position of stress. So don't put any money down is my advice. Don't come out of pocket for that. So that's kind of my tips on leasing. Let me see, what else do I have for you guys here? When it comes to getting cars, I often have to start months in advance. So like I said, the deals are not always available. And sometimes if you wait and continue to look, you should almost make it a daily habit. You'll see that oftentimes dealerships will be running promotions and specials on certain makes and models that might fit the criteria of what you're looking for Turo. So when you do come across that, they also have a lot of leeway in those promotions because there's a reason why they're trying to push those cars and why they're trying to get them off the lot. So that's a lot of times where you can get really good deals and a lot of times where I have found really good deals. Now you can also use other platforms. There's a great platform called Swap Lease, and you can go and see kind of what cars people have available, what the mileage looks like. So that's an alternative as well. So just takes a little bit of research. There's tons of people right now who are trying to get out of cars. Maybe they can't afford their payments. So you can get really creative on how you accumulate your cars and acquire them. You just have to really look outside of the box. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to a dealership and do it that way. You got to do some research and look around, and if you look around, you can almost always find opportunities. So just it's a matter of putting in that time and that effort to find that stuff. And finally, let's just talk about an exit out of the lease and why I like it. So that is my 2021 strategy, is to make sure that I'm in all leases, right? Because leases have such a clear, beautiful exit out of them. And not enough people take time to think about this. And it's so important. I can't stress it enough. When you're in a 2 to 3 year lease, you know exactly how you're getting out of it. That time period ends and you return a car, okay? And if there are things like mileage overages or whatever it might be, that can all be dealt with. But oftentimes what people don't think about, even if you're buying a car outright in cash, or if you're financing it for a 5 to 6 year loan, what happens in 2 to 3 years? What happens on year 4 when your maintenance and your warranties have ran out and now your car is having issues? It has wear and tear, it has a lot of miles, and there's just all these variables that come up. How do you deal with that? How do you plan for that? How do you anticipate for that? How do you know how much that's going to cost you? What if that just eats all of your profits? Then what? Are you just working for? So really think about that. The nice thing about leases is, let's just say, you know, you do a 15 to 18,000 mile per year lease and you still end up with mileage overage. Well, there's a lot of ways that you can actually offset something like that. One, Turo has it already built into their system where you can charge for mileage overage. So you can sort of set money aside if people do go over and you have that cash on hand. Or not only that, but if you're getting out of one lease and you're rolling into something else, they will work with you on mitigating anything that you might have in the negative, like mileage overage. So there's just so much that you can do when it comes to leases. And it's much more difficult when you're in a car that you've purchased, because it's very difficult to roll in negative equity or excess depreciation into another vehicle. Then you really have to look for something that is heavily discounted, heavily being promoted, and you have to work with a dealership that can really find you room to cushion that negative equity. And it gets complicated, and it's just not something that you want to do, because you're still sort of carrying on a negative, you know, for another 5-6 years or whatever it might be. So that is why I like leases, is because there's such a clear exit. And not only that, the best part about leases is that it keeps you competitive in the market, right? You have to remember that markets grow over time. There's new people that come in, new competition that comes in. And when people enter the market, as time goes on, depending on how a market is trending, they're typically coming in with newer cars, newer makes and models. So it is going to start edging you out if you don't continue to stay on top of that and offer something of better value, better quality, newer, and so on. So that's why leases are really great, because it kind of keeps you in the game over time. So that is why leases are my preference. It has such a clear exit. You don't have to worry about what happens after the fact. And typically within a 2 to 3 year period, the car is mostly in warranty. You can get maintenance programs included into it. So there's just a lot of upside to it, in my opinion. And that's just what has worked for me. But again, like I said, at the end of the day, you really have to do your own research. and figure out what it is that you're comfortable with doing. Maybe it is buying a car outright, or maybe it is going to auction. I don't know. I haven't done those things because they never mathematically made sense to me. So you have to kind of figure out what is the best thing for you and the way that you live your life. It all really makes a difference, and it's on such an individual basis, right? But to kind of end with where I see money in the marketplace for this upcoming year in 2022, it's gonna definitely be in the cars that are offering people experiences. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the more expensive car that's gonna make more margins. Rather, it's the car that provides the best experience, the unique experience, the thing that maybe someone can't get elsewhere, right? That is what has made Airbnb so great. People are able to go spend time and make memories in these homes that they would otherwise never own. There would not be a hotel in that area that would provide that same feel as a home does, where you can have, 8 people in a house and your whole family, and you can barbecue in the yard. It's just a different experience that a hotel can't provide. So same things with cars. How can you provide a unique experience? And you should really take that into account, because that is where the margins are going to be in this marketplace. That is going to be the differentiating factor. That is where you can create an edge for yourself and not have to worry about your competition, which is going to allow you to set your own day rates, which are typically going to be higher and more margins. So there's a lot to it. And I think that the best thing you can do is really take your time and think about what fits best for you and how you can really create an edge for yourself. So those are the questions to keep in mind. I hope that you guys found this video informative. This is just how one girl does her Turo business. Everyone does it differently and has a different opinion on it. So I'm just here to share my experience. Thank you guys all so much for all the amazing comments and questions that you guys have been leaving lately. Hopefully my videos are answering a lot of the questions that are out there. Thank you again for watching. Once again, my name is Saimah. This is Saimah's Experience. And if you like this channel, be sure to subscribe. Mwah. Take care, guys.